Nettles are really a special plant. They have such great food value, and they have fed our ancestors for tens of thousands of years. But our basket's already getting pretty full. Pretty great. Ah! Oh, Lindy, come on. All right, we're out questing once again. Little foraging adventure. Our quest for today is to find as many nettles as we can. The young nettle growth in the spring now. And then we're going to make some delicious nettle pesto and see what other spring greens we find. Maybe there's some more Dame's Rocket or dandelions or whatever else we can find that we can add to the pesto to like give it a bit more oomph. That's right, oomph. A bit more like herbal power, you know? So I got a good feeling about this. We saw nettles like a week and a half ago already. I have some friends that I know already harvested some, so I'm hoping we can get some. And ooh, actually as we're walking here, I'm seeing some burdock right here.
Ta-da!
Check it out.
And a poop.
And a dog poop next to it. Great. Let's grab maybe this burdock. There's something I want to try out. This will be a good test to start the video. Here, Lindy, take this quick. So supposedly burdock leaves when they're young are edible. And to this day, I have not figured out how to make these edible, because to me, they're just super bitter and unpleasant. But you know, another plant that has similar properties is the arrowleaf balsam root. And that one also has bitter leaves and bitter leaf stems. But with that one, we have found out that if we peel it, the leaf stems are actually really delicious, a great vegetable to eat. So I've been wanting to try this year with the burdock as well. So I'm going to do that now. Getting all that outer layer skin off, and then we'll see if this is actually edible, because oftentimes I have a feeling those bitter properties hang out in that skin of the leaf stem. Actually, not that bad. It's still slightly bitter, but way less. So this might be the trick to make the burdock leaves more edible. If I blanched this, I bet we'd get rid of a lot more of the bitterness, but there's not much left. Pretty sweet. I like it. Note it. So we're in one of the river bottoms, and that's where I usually find most nettles in the spring. Welcome to nettle therapy. We found our first patch of nettles. I'm laying in them right now, getting stung, but that's all right, because even though they do have these nasty stingers that can make you all itchy, there's actually benefit to that. And throughout ancient times and the medieval times, people knew about that, and they actually used nettles to treat arthritis by whipping themselves or having someone else whip them with the nettles on the spots where they're having pain. So the nettle has an interesting medicinal use there, but it's also an amazing food plant, especially now in the spring when they're still little like these. They're really tender, not super fibrous yet, and just super tasty. And they also have a decent amount of magnesium, so they're quite nutritious as well. Now you can still harvest these during later times of the year. At that point, you just really want to make sure you get the new growth on top from the bigger plants and just pinch it off. That's then going to be the most tender for food use. But like I said, right now, it's really a great time to get them because there's not a bunch of ground cover yet. You know, there's not a bunch of other plants. So they really stick out. And if you're not sure if you have a nettle, you can do an easy test. Just grab them and poke yourself. And if it starts to get itchy and you get a few bumps, you know you have a stinging nettle. The leaves are an opposite arrangement, meaning they both come out from the same spot on the stem. And if we're looking at these leaves here, at this point, of their life cycle, they're still kind of broad. They're more of a dark green on top, a lighter green on the bottom. And you can notice that the mid vein and the secondary veins in the bottom of the leaves are protruding on the bottom, and on the top they're depressed, meaning that they're not flat on the leaf, but they're indented basically. And then also the margin of the leaf, meaning the outside of the leaf here, is serrated, so it's toothed. You know, a smooth margin would be without these teeth, but these have these noticeable teeth on them. So that's something to look for. And then as the months progress here, the nettles are going to grow tall stalks, and they're going to bear flowers in those. And the leaves tend to often get a lot more thinner and more lanceolate shaped, more like lance shaped. But you know, you can still use the nettles when they're bigger like that. They just might be a bit more fibrous, but that's okay. You can get around that by boiling them and whatnot. So we're gonna harvest a bunch here now, see how many we can get, and then hopefully try to find some more spots, because these are honestly a lot smaller than I thought they would be, but that's okay. So we're kind of getting to the point now where we took a good amount in this spot, but our basket's already getting pretty full. It's pretty great. They're very prolific. These stinging nettles are perennial, so when you do have your spots, make sure to mark them. You can come back to them like every year. Oh, Lindy, come on. I don't have arthritis yet. So there's not really any dangerous lookalikes that I'm aware of with nettles, but of course, like always, be 100% sure with your identification before you eat any wild food. One plant you might confuse with the stinging nettle is the woods nettle, which is also edible, and actually one that I like even more than the stinging nettle. And then potentially, mint family plants might look pretty similar to the nettle, but they're not going to have those stinging needles, and the mints have a nicely square stem. But there's a lot of variations even between stinging nettle.
I have a little bit of a pro tip for you guys, which is to, when you go in and harvest, if you're not wearing gloves, because a lot of people like to wear gloves with them. I don't really like gloves. They bother me. So I just go in and I go straight down to the bottom of where I want to pinch, and I kind of move my fingers up. Well, I grab the root on that one. Try not to do that, but you're kind of pushing your fingers up on the barbs instead of down, so it's not poking you quite as bad. So like my fingertips themselves, we've been picking for a little while. They're totally fine. There's no rash. But the spots where I've touched the plants from up above, those then get the little pokies. So.
Yeah, and it's really not an issue. I mean, you kind of get used to the stinginess of the nettles, and it does go away after like 2 hours or so. And for me personally, I only really feel it in like the first few minutes of harvesting them. But like Lindy said, if you are more comfortable wearing gloves, that's totally okay. Wear your gloves. Okay, we have moved on, looking for more spots now. And one thing you might be asking yourself is, if these nettles have all these stingers, how can we make them edible? And there's a trick for that before we make it into pesto. So we'll show you how to do that once we get there. Okay, we've been looking for a while. Didn't find anything until now. Made it to the next little creek and got into some nettles again. So right here, you can tell, in this little mound, there's a good amount of nettles growing. Check it out. These are actually a bit taller already than in the last spot. Probably because they're getting a bit more sunlight. Also, nettles are really a special plant. They have such great food value, and they have fed our ancestors for tens of thousands of years. I know for sure in Europe, they've been eating nettles for a very long time. Native Americans were eating them. In Ireland, they were a really important food for the people during the times of the famine, which was a really hard time back then. And nettles were one of those foods that really saved a lot of people's dinners, you know. Made sure, because of the nettles, people were able to get something on the table to eat. So I just always like to keep that in mind, you know, while I'm harvesting them. And I think it's important that we just consider those things as we're harvesting these wild plants and just kind of learn about some of the history around them and, you know, understand that they have been a really important food for humans for a very long time. And I think that makes it pretty special. So just wanted to add that here to the video. And hopefully as you go out and start to learn about nettles and start to harvest some of them, you get to feel that same appreciation for them that we do and that I'm sure our ancestors felt when they were harvesting them. All right, just got a good bunch over here. There's still a good amount back there. Look at that. Nice nettles. All right, guys, we're just walking past one of the oyster spots I've marked. Sorry for the car noises, but we're kind of close to a road. And we're just like walking over here and I'm like, we should check this tree. And from like 30 yards away, I'm seeing mushrooms over there. So let's go check them out. Athletic. They're a bit dried out, it looks like. But here we go. Some oyster mushrooms. This is the biggest ones we've found this year so far. Let's see how we can get in here best. Maybe start with one. Oh, that looks prime to me. Holy crap. Let's get these out of there. This is why I love spring foraging. You find a bunch of good mushrooms. Perfect spring plants. We've just been finding some of these like throughout the last 2 weeks. That one might have a few bugs, but so far they're looking pretty dang good. These should be big enough that they've already let some spores loose. There's some smaller ones in here I'm gonna leave. Guys, I feel like I'm mushroom rich. Look at that. Wow. This is always a welcome sight. And if you haven't learned about oysters, we have a whole podcast episode with Tim Frost. That's like an hour of nerding out about oyster mushrooms. Oh, it smells so good. The best part is none of these look buggy, which is kind of hard to find. But we haven't had that many bugs out, which is super nice. Big win. We're going to take these home now and maybe we'll find some more nettles on the way. Let's go. All right, the sun has come out. It's gotten pretty hot and we've been foraging for quite a while now, but I think we're ready to go home. Check it out. I'm pretty happy with that harvest. Lots of nettles in here. We got some mushrooms. I even got some dandelion crowns. And one more thing I want to say is that if you want to see like more of our foraging videos, I will drop our foraging playlist in the description so you can check that out. Once this video is done, you can see some of the other videos there. And I'll also include a link to the playlist for all the podcast episodes. But don't leave yet. Now it's time to go home and turn these nettles into delicious wild nettle pesto. Let's do it. All right, folks, we are back home now. It's actually a few days later, and we have been eating away at some of the nettles we've been finding, but we still have a good batch left here, and we're going to turn those now into our wild spring green pesto. And we'll show you how we do that. So first of all, pesto, awesome condiment to use on like meat. That's probably where I like to use it most. Pizza, sourdough, discard pizza. Awesome way to do it. But you can really use it like on top of bread, make pasta with it. Lots of uses for a good pesto. And the nettles are really one of those spring greens that lend themselves pretty well to it, I would say. So far, all we did was sort through the nettles, make sure there's no other greens in there or sticks or weird grasses. You only want to be eating what you're intending to harvest and use. And then we also got some other spring greens. Lindy. Here we have some Dame's Rocket Greens, one of our favorite spring and summer edibles. If you want to see how we use Dame's Rocket, once the flower stalk pops up and it starts to grow as little flower heads, there's a video of that on our channel. I'll blend it in up top, and I'll also add a link in the description. Really worth checking out. It's an invasive species and grows, I think, all over the US, and definitely one you need to be adding to your foraging list if you haven't already.
Definitely.
So first things first, I told you earlier that there's a secret to making these nettles edible so that you're not getting an itchy throat and getting everything torn up by those stingers, and that is to blanch them. So you need to blanch them in some water, and that's what we're going to do now. Blanching is pretty straightforward. Lindy's just going to drop these nettles into some boiling water, and then you're just going to basically boil it for a few minutes here. Literally like just 2 to 3 minutes is what we usually do. That should be plenty. And then next, you want to get a bowl going with ice cold water. So we have ice cubes and a strainer on top. And when you're done blanching, just drop those nettles right into that ice cold water. All right, now that everything's blanched and ready to go on that front, we're going to just dry it all off with our salad spinner here. You can also use like paper towel or a clean rag to kind of just squeeze all that moisture out of there as much as you can. And now we're ready to get blending. So we got all of our ingredients here. We have our Parmesan. We got extra virgin olive oil, walnuts, some garlic, and our greens. And this is the nettles with the Dame's Rocket Greens. We already blanched those too. Put those in there. Back here, we're making a rhubarb and spruce tip wine. That's not part of this video, but potentially a future one. So when it comes to quantities with this, it's really kind of up to you. I've eyeballed this in the past, and we're very much eyeball type cooks. But what we're going to do for our wild spring recipe here now is 3 cups of greens, 1 cup of cheese, 1 cup of extra virgin olive oil, and 1 cup of nuts, and then 2 tablespoons of this already like grated garlic. That should, be a good kind of starting point for you. And then from there, you can obviously change things up if you would like to. We're not going to add any salt now, but you can also add salt later, just salt to taste. Always better to do less salt and then add more if you have to. But I think the Parmesan cheese here is going to have a good amount in there. Oh, that olive oil looks so good. All right, our pesto is blended all smoothly. This is kind of the consistency you're trying to go for right here. Next up, we're going to put it in some of our jars, and we're just, for the video's sake, for keeping it a bit shorter, we're just going to show you how we're doing one. Actually, before we put it in the jar, Lindy, quick taste test. How is it?
Good.
Dang good.
Like pesto.
Yeah. We could add a little bit of salt, I think. We'll do that. But besides that, really, really good. I like it. All right, here you go. Got our pesto right here. Beautiful color. Awesome spring green color. Really fits the vibe of this time of the year. And we like to use, again, these smaller jars because then we're not wasting anything. You can keep this in the fridge now for about a week. You can freeze it, and then it's good for several months in the freezer. Or you can also, if you have like a pressure canner, you can can this. And then I bet it's shelf stable for probably a few years. So that's something we want to get into with pesto and stuff like that. We're going to start canning it. That's probably the best way to really keep your things for a long time to come. All right, well, that's it. I hope you really enjoyed this video, and don't forget to check down below in the description for more of our foraging videos in the playlist. Bye bye.